All right, 6 a.m. Central African time. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for choosing to wake up with us here on Eswatini TV and join us here on Kusile Breakfast Show. We hope that you had yourselves a restful night. Lovely rest indeed. But we do have a beautiful morning here in Babane, but low temperatures not today. If you really think about it, we're operating at like 4 degrees Celsius. Expected to rise to at least 7 as we start the day. But it's going to be a sunny day at 24 degrees Celsius. Later on, the sunniest day this week. So at least we are going to feel some warmth
and
today.
July comes to an end.
Yeah, July. It hasn't been that windy if you really think about it.
Yeah,
this
it
July.
really hasn't
Which
for
is
July.
Good.
Yeah, which is good. But I guess also we can look forward to a new season coming in this August. A very good morning to you and welcome to the show. My name is Kusile Sithole. Thank you so much for choosing to be with us this morning. Despite all wealth, July of 2025 saw Angola's fuel prices rising over 33%, which triggered strikes and protests in the capital, Luanda. Now, reports have it that 4 people have been killed and 500 arrested during the demonstrations. In other news, the U.S. has imposed a 50% tariff on Brazil after U.S. President Donald Trump accused it of attacks on U.S. companies. Now, look out for more in our international segment. And locally, we have poverty being identified as one of the leading causes of human trafficking, and the DPM officially launching the construction of a boys' hostel at St. Joseph Mission School. Catch those news in Eswatini, and also we'll have news at 7. Stunting and acute malnutrition are among the challenges affecting child development in Eswatini. One study has it that more than 50% of children between 6 to 23 months do not meet the minimum acceptable diet. In addition, 2/3 of children 6 to 23 months old who are not breastfeeding do not receive the minimum acceptable diet. Ahead of World Breastfeeding Week, we'll tackle infant and young child feeding practices in Eswatini. What are the gaps, urban-rural inequalities, and the call for support for mothers and greater community awareness to protect, promote, and support breastfeeding?
Coming up at 7:30 this morning, our second interview segment, we turn our attention to a crisis that is threatening the backbone of Eswatini's rural economy. In fact, it's not only the rural economy, our economy as a whole, but mostly the rural economy is affected. The foot-and-mouth disease, which has returned to the southern regions, it is disrupting a livestock movement, it is halting beef exports, and it is casting a long shadow over household incomes. But of course, behind the emergency response lies a bigger story, one of reform, one of resilience, and a radical rethink of agriculture in the Kingdom of Eswatini. And this morning, we sit down with the Minister for Agriculture, Mandla Chauka, who is going to unpack the state of containment, the push toward food sovereignty, and the investments that are being made to future-proof this sector. Now, from the ground realities to the long-term vision, safeguarding livelihoods, there's rebuilding confidence, but there's also securing the future of Eswatini's food systems. That conversation is up next at 7:30 with Minister Mandla Chauka. Good morning indeed again, Kusile. We cannot go too far.
We're going to have quite the show today, I bet you.
Absolutely.
But first, let's have a look at what's making headlines in print. In the Times of Eswatini this morning, it is reported that 21 Taiwan investors are bringing 1.85 billion emalangeni to the country and 13,000 jobs. Now, these include established firms that include textile, cotton, plastic manufacturing. Also, over 300 million emalangeni investment in electrification, Taiwan Industrial Park in the pipeline. Now, this is just one of the investments that I look forward to, Sfiso, in the country, saying as we're Africa's new promise, and we have, positioned ourselves as an investment destination.
100%.
Also, another headline you can expect there is Nkosi Eswatini graduating yesterday. And also another headline you can expect is that of a 2.7 million emalangeni FinCorp fraud, whereas a socialite has been arrested in this regard. Another headline regarding to rates defaulters, there's a bid to stop sale of properties fails. D-Day for Siposhongwe.
Interesting indeed. Congratulations to Princess Ezwe on her graduation with the Bachelor of Arts in Global Management. So beautiful to see. We were just witnessing Prince Mkwasho graduate just a week ago. Beautiful stories indeed. Turning our attention now to the back end of this publication, and here are your top stories in the sports sector from the Times of Eswatini. The absence of head coach Montiro. Caleb flies with birds. Ngwenya at Capital City Giants practice match against Ubombo Sugar FC. And there's mystery which surrounds the return of newly appointed Swallows Mo's gaffer. On another one, 260,000 Emalangeni for the FinTech Mbamane Marathon, while Bayern signed Diaz for £75 million. It's a lot of money.
It is. And on the Eswatini Observer this morning, the King has unveiled Taiwan's 6 billion Emalangeni investment. Now, that is the Taiwan Industrial Park that at least is expected to cover 158 hectares in Pokweni and will take about 18 months to complete, bringing over 10,000 jobs. In another headline there, Inyanga shot and survives. What a grace to survive a shooting this morning. And also in another headline, with regards to the Exponent Saga, 340 million Emalangeni Exponent Saga, we will recover lost funds in a year. Now that is a promise according to the Minister of Finance, Honorable Neil Birkenberg.
Yeah, we should recover. Anyway, looking at our sports news, this is the Observer, the Eswatini Observer, the top story. 23-year-old records fall at Africa School Games. That is Haley Hoy of the nation. This teen swimming sensation dives into history. Good play on words there. On another one, Ali Khomongwe owns Highlanders Pty Ltd, not FC. While Sifiso Mabila is shown the door, his chapter has been closed at Mbabane Swallows as the long-serving defender. This Sifiso Mabila was asked to stop training with the rest of the team, bringing an end to his remarkable 14-year stint with the club. Only invited guests for Ingwenyama Cup presentation. The Premier League of Eswatini has made it clear that today's Ingwenyama Cup presentation will strictly be by invitation, warning that only guests who have been issued formal invitations would be allowed into the venue. Wow.
Make sure to bring your invitations. On the Eswatini Daily News front page this morning, the Taiwanese 6 billion Emalangeni project is making waves again. Also, in another headline, you can expect that Japan has granted over 24 million Emalangeni to support OVCs in Eswatini. In another headline, churchgoers are under fire for neglecting elderly relatives. That's a story I look forward to reading. And also another story, there goes, Education Ministry commits to equitable school feeding program.
Right, we turn to the Eswatini Daily News sports headlines. Making the top story there is the Bull 2 dialogue with PLE, the EFA over name change saga. That is Highlanders, of course, that have been trending for this development, who are set to meet both Premier League of Eswatini and Eswatini Football Association on Friday to resolve this name change saga. While 2.5 million Emalangeni Trade Fair Cup prices have been undecided from the international front, New Ghana Gyökeres could debut against Spurs.
And it's now 11 minutes after 6. In a minute, Sfiso will bring us Tinzaba in Siswati.
Ngalo muhle asiphinze sikwamukele ka Kusile Breakfast Show sibukana titindzaba tethu tesiswati. Umhlonishwa Ndvunankhulu Russell Miso Dlamini uthi Busweti ngulenye tintfo ke letihamba embili letibangela bantfu ukuthi bashushumbiseke. Ndvunankhulu uthi uma kungakheka ematfuba emisebenti lenele kanye nemnotfo ukhule, bantfu ke bangakhona kutimela bangashushumbiseki kamalula. Ndvunankhulu kushito loku ngesikhatsi kugujwa lusuku lwekulwa nekushushumbiswa kwebantfu, i-World Day Against Trafficking in Persons at the George Kamanzini ngalesithathu.
Bantfu labasikhombisa kulabalishumi labahlala emaphandleni lapha Eswatini baphila kamatima, kanti munye kulabane uphila ebuswetini lobumatima. Leti tinombolo letivela ngeleswatini ekhasini langcondvomshina lakamhlaba letindzaba tekudla. Lamaswati lawa asengotini lenkhulu yekuthi ashushumbiseke malula kunalabanye njengoba kuvelile emcimbini wekugubha lusuku lwekulwa nekushushumbiswa kwebantfu kutsi busweti ngulenye intfo leyenta bantfu bashushumbiseke malula.
I-human trafficking ikhona kangwane. Umqoka-ke ukuthi silwe nayo ngokubambisana ikakhulu emakhaya lasemaphandleni, emakhaya lapho kusweleke kakhulu khona ngoba ngulapho badingela khona. Indzaba yokushushumbisa abantu seyindlela yokugqila lobusha. It's a new form of enslavement. Uhulumende bekunene uqinisele ukuthi alwe nayo lo mkhuba wokushushumbisa abantu. Ukuthi avikele abantu besifazane, avikele bantwana. Noma ukuthi-ke laba bayawusebenza ngephandle abalandzelelele ukuthi bakuphi vele balaba khona ngekuthanza kwabo yini noma baphoqeleliwe ukuthi babe khona.
Lobukela ihhovisi lakamhlaba lapha Eswatini George Wachira uthi bashushumbisi bakha tigitsigitsi temadola ase-America ngalobucala.
It's bringing in about 150 billion in profits, US dollars, 150 billion US dollars in profit to the people that are carrying out this crime. So it's a crime that appears to pay and pay very well. We must remind ourselves as we commemorate this day that behind these figures and the organization behind these figures and their dark sophistication are lives of people, children, women, boys, men that are forever altered as a result of the experiences that they go through.
Hulumende utibophelele ekutseni utawukwenda konke langakwenda kuvikela emaswati ekushushumbisweni. Ugcizelele nekutsi tinkantolo kufanele tisebente tindzaba taloluhlobo ngesivinini njengobe kusisimba kwato kuvimba kusebenta kwengalo yemtsetfo. Lobika Ngthemkosi Mavimbela, Inagiyani Msibi, Kamanzini.
Sikhulu sidzingo sakwekuthi ikhuliswe imali yabogogo nabomkhulu kude-ke batawukhona kuphila njengoba ke lezinga lokudula kwetintfo lisetulu. Lokhu kwenta ukuthi bangakhoni kwenta lokungabathuthukisa ngale mali ngaphandle kwekuthenga kudla. Lokhu kushiwo liphini landvunankhulu imphunga Kusile Dladla uma liphendvula timphunga ngesikhatsi likomiti lelibuke kusebenta kwelihhovisi lalo litsingitsa umbiko wekusebenta kwalelo hhovisi.
Ngamuva kokuthi liphini landvunankhulu umhlonishwa Kusile Dladla lethule sendvulelo sembiko welihhovisi lalo, sihlalo waleli komiti lelibuke kusebenta kwalelo hhovisi leliphini landvunankhulu endlini yetimphunga, umntwanenkosi Mphathwa unikete emalunga leli komiti kutsi sala udzingidza lo mbiko, kanti timphunga tidumise kakhulu umsebenti welihhovisi leliphini landvunankhulu wekuphumela isivini limikise lusito loludzingekile.
Kube nalabanye labakuphi ehlobeni tethu wasuka lapha thole imali lahlata le nakufanele avuka emsebenzini wavuka afile lasitakala
disaster akaqhubeke nakathenga impahla ayibuke le quality ngobe lokungabhuki le quality ngikona kolokusibisela emva.
Siyabonga nje ukuthi ne-ICT did something about this issue on page 31. Sitawucela lokuthi nathi sigcine sitfolile lelo sito lokuthi sikhone ukuthi sente nje lama-basic sign languages.
Bancane labantwana baye baqale nje kusakhanya badayise tinjunjo badayise amaswidi but liyashona leli langa sebacela imali bacela bo-2 bengingacela ku-DPM ukuthi mane athumele ama-officers wawo semane bayo-check-a status salabantwana.
Liphindandwe nankulu umhlonishwa Thulisile Dladla libe seliphendula leminye yemibuto yetimbunga.
Asilwe leli lokuthi at least le elderly grant ayifike noma 1,000. Kuye kube ngcono uma ukhanza ukuthi babe umkhulu nagogo bakanye kanye basaphila. So labo bamthola 1,200. Lengikhohle kukusho. Cishi each and every homestead lesivakashelako kunalo ne-disability, kunalo khubatekile, kakhulu le-autism. So bese kuba inkinga uma sivile siyaba enrolla kulama grants.
Sihlalo waleli komiti umfana ngoSimphathwa ubese ucela liphindandwe nankulu ukuthi lilethe impendvulo letibhalwe phansi. Kubika Mbongwa Dube kalobamba.
Akulokunye liphini la ndvunankhulu umhlonishwa Thulisile Dladla lisukumise ngalokusemthethweni umsebenzi wekwakhiwa kwehostela yabafana lelungela labakhubatekile esikolweni eMzimbovu. Liphini la ndvunankhulu umhlonishwa Thulisile Dladla lithi kunakekela abantwana labakhubatekile ngelithandvo kutawusita ukuthi bantwana babe sivele sinelutsandvo kusasa. Liphini la ndvunankhulu likuvete lokho ngesikhatsi lihlaba lisoyi esikolweni eMzimbovu kaManzini.
Hulumende welive le-Taiwan solo uyachubeka nekubambisa hulumende wakangwane elihlangothini lwetemfundvo ngekwesekela ukwakhiwa kwalesikolo sebantfwana labakhubatekile ngemali lenganga 6.3 million emalangeni. Liphini la ndvunankhulu umhlonishwa Thulisile Dladla litvumise umsebenzi lomuhle lowentiwa ngemamishini ekwelekeleleni hulumende kutemfundvo.
Kufanele ukuthi umntwana simbone ukuthi usesikolweni. Kufanele ukuthi umntwana simbone ukuthi akalambi. Kufanele umntwana simbone ukuthi uhleli kahle. Leni nangu umliba phela lona lweni. Ngaphandle kwabo livela kangwane ngeke libe khona. Ngaphandle kwabo uma singabasonzedi kithi sibaphe uthando. Sitabe sibreathe together. Litaba ne-anger and kusasa bagangathe bantwa bethu batukulu bethu lethini ungathi siphila kangcono. So ngiyajabula nje ukuthi sine Ministry of Education sibambene. They fully understand and appreciate our mandate as the office of the Deputy Prime Minister.
Umbhishobhi wemakatolika kuleli Jose Ponce uthi-ke sekude imali labayitfolako ngephandle kwesekela imisebenzi letsite.
We no longer receive any financial support from abroad for this project. Still, the Catholic Church in the Kingdom every year puts aside $250,000 in Malangeni, 250,000 in Malangeni, just to support the running of the boarding house.
Umbhishobhi uthi njalo ngemnyaka libandla lemakatolika lapha eveni libeka eceleni imali lenganga 150,000 emalangeni lokuyimali lebese yesekela lesikolo saseMzimbovu. Lobekamelele indvuna yelitiko letemfundvo Lungelo Nhlengethwa uthi-ke batawuchubeka nekusebenzisana nelovisi leliphini la ndvunankhulu ekunakekeleni bantfwana labakhubatekile. Lesakhiwo kubhekeke ukuthi siphele kwakhiwa ngaDisemba 2025. Kubika Sondomlangeni, titfombe tfolakele ehhovisini letekuchumana ka-DPM.
Njengoba tebuciko letatiwa nge-AI, Artificial Intelligence, nindlondlobala, futhi-ke tigucuka njalo emhlabeni. Livela kangwane kufanele lihlale linemitsetfo lekhaliphile letawucinisekisa ukuthi sive siphephile etingonini letifaka ekhatsi imininingwane yaso leyo-ke lehlukene. Lokho kushiwo ngemalunga elikomiti lendlu yetimphunga lelibuka kusebenta kwelitiko letekwatisa ngesikhatsi kudzingidvwa umbiko wekusebenta kwalelitiko kwesigamu sekucala semnyaka wekusebenta kwemali yahulumende.
Nakathi ngithi umbiko wesigamu sekuqala wekusebenta kwelitiko letekwatisa emalunga elikomiti letimpunga lelibuke kusebenta kwalo lelitiko atsinze tingoni letihlukene letifaka ekhatsi inhlalakahle yetisebenti tetinkampani tahulumende letingaphansi kwalelitiko netinhlelo tekundlondlobalisa tekuchumana kuleli.
Umthetho lotasibhasobhela AI la event utawufika nini nawo nangabe utawuba khona nini nduna.
Angithumise nalomntana welitiko Eswatini Television Authority lesithombe sikliye uyabona ukuthi kwentekani
uthangabe kuyawuqala nini vele lo ukuthi sibukele live siyekele lokubukela emabhola ebantu
kulo government stack le lokhuluma ngalo gov stack ndlona ingabe ubuka tintfo letinsha letitawudevelopa noma utawukhona ukuthi uphindze ubuyele emuva usasenathi tintfo besitulo sakha ngama-government tool ngama-digital tools lamanye lokunye kudumisa ngiloko ama-qualifications lona lesikubonako loko ukuthi ama-qualifications asatawendiwa nge-eshek onke loko kutawusita ukuthi ema-higher institutions of learning la even akhone ukuthi abantu basheshe bawabuke ukuthi accreditiwe arenkwe njani akuphi nekuthi emaswati nawo qualified vele kutawubona ukuthi kube ngiloku standard.
Sayiphendula indvuna yetekwatisa impunga Savana Maziya ichazile ukuthi imisebenzi leminyenti yetebuciko lengabe litiko liyenda ngesivinini ibanjwa kuba kuncane kwemali leliphakelwa yona lelitiko.
I mean, the money that we have and what we've done is really miraculous. So if we can really be, supported to say, if everything must be digitized, if we can be a system to be able to track them. If we can be able to track my passport, if you can be able to track, whether our procurement system, how it works, and we have it in that particular manner. Sometimes you can track if we love this country as we say we do, then let's work like we do. If we love the king as we say we do, then let's support him to get to this first world dream that he wants us to get to. And our agencies can really do that, but we need all of government to come along with us.
Sihlalo waleli komiti impunga umthane Nkosi Ncenge ubese ucela indvuna ukuthi isale iletha impendulo letibhaliwe ngalesihlanu. Kubika Mbonga Dube kalobamba.
Indvuna litiko letemafa umhlonishwa Neil Reichenberg ithi libandla lelibutha umthelo noma lingakhona kubutha umthelo longanga 16.5 billion emalangeni kulomnyaka sitawuchubeka ke sibe khona sidzingo sekuboleka imali. Indvuna ithi lo mthelo kangeke wenele kwesekela emaphakelo elive ngoba kudzingeka 32.3 billion emalangeni. Indvuna ke ikuvete lokho uma ichaza ngemuva kwekuthi imemetele ukuthi libandla lelibutha umthelo lonyaka litawubhekeka ukuthi libuthe 16.5 billion emalangeni.
Indvuna yelitiko letemafa imemetele ukuthi libandla lelibutha umthelo yeSwatini Revenue Service litawubhekeka ukuthi libuthe imali lenganga 16.5 billion emalangeni kulomnyaka. Lokwende bantfu ukuthi batibute ukuthi sikhona yini isidingo sekuthi live lichubeke nekweboleka imali. Indvuna yetemafa umhlonishwa Neil Reichenberg ithi emaphakelo elive adzinga imali lenganga 32.3 billion emalangeni. Indvuna ithi lo mthelo ngeke wenele ngoba emaphakelo adzinga imali lephinzene kabili kuleyo yemthelo.
The fact that our GDP is now growing as a country is really helping us to be able to actually take a bit more debt on board. So we try and stay about the 40 to 41% debt to GDP ratio, meaning that the affordability of repaying the debt.
Indvuna ithi live liyakhona kweboleka ngoba umnotfo, i-gross domestic product, iniketa lithemba. Indvuna ithi live lingakhona kuchubeka nekuboleka ngoba lokumcoka ukuthi live likhone kubhadala sikwelede kanye nendalo. Indvuna ithi esikhatsini lesiningi akusiyo inkinga kubhadala sikwenede kepha kuyaye kube yindalo kubhadaleka kwayo lokuyaye kube likhuni. Indvuna ithi live lonyaka litawubhadala imali lenga 2.6 billion emalangeni lokuyindalo. Indvuna ithi ke live line recurrent budget lokuyimali uhulumende la ibhadalako leng 25 billion emalangeni bese ke capital expenditure yona iba ngu7.3 billion emalangeni. Indvuna ithi emaholo itisebenzi wona adzinga 10 billion emalangeni bese kuthi ke kudzingeka na 15 billion emalangeni lokuyimali yetintfo letimcoka letifaka ekhatsi kubhadala timoto kanye nekubhadala tinkampani lokufaka ekhatsi yona inkampani lebutha umthelo. live liphindze lithole imali enhlanganweni isakhu lengu-11 billion emalangeni. Bese kuba ngu-1 billion emalangeni lokuyimali yemthelo lechamuka etinhlangothini letahlukene. Kubika Sonto Mlangeni, eMbabane.
Tinkampani telive le-Taiwan leti ngu-21 setihlanganyele imali lengetulu kwa-1 billion emalangeni. Lokhu kuvetwe ngilomele live le-Taiwan kuleli Jeremy Liang emhlanganweni lebewukadze ubuka kwekutsi live le-Eswatini kanye nele-Taiwan angasekelana kanjani kutfutfukisa umnotfo. Lo mhlangano bewubanjelwe eRoyal Villas eZulwini.
Lomele live le-Taiwan kuleli Jeremy Liang uthi bantfu labacashwe ngiletinkampani leting-21 babalelwa ku-13,000.
Taiwanese businesses have already established 21 companies in Eswatini, operating in sectors such as textile and garment, cotton manufacturing, and plastics, etc.
Uyachaza ukuthi lela live liyachubeka nekwakha imithetho nemigomo letawutfutfukisa kusebenzisana emkhatsini kwelive leSwatini nalela live kutebhizinisi. Lohola lelibandla letebhizinisi lelibuya eveni le-Taiwan uthi njengoba balapha eveni bete nabo somabhizinisi lababuya etinkampanini letikhicita ngalokunganyuku imvelo, tebuciko, temithi kanye nemaphilisi, ama-pharmaceuticals, tekwakha kanye netekukhicita timphahla kuletinye.
With the full support of the Taiwanese government, I'm confident that our companies will align with government policy.
Uyaveta ukuthi uma bathola ukuthi imithetho yekuhlanyela imali yakuleli ihambisana kahle naleyo yele-Taiwan, tinkampani takulela live titawuhlanyela imali lapha eveni ngaphandle kwenkinga. Umcondzisi jikelele etiko letangaphandle eveni le-Taiwan uthi bete kuleli kutewufundza baphindze bayiconze kahle imithetho yekusebenta kwebahlanyela imali.
Let us seize this valuable opportunity to jointly lay a solid foundation.
Uyaveta ukuthi Taiwan itanelwati lolujulile kutebhizinisi lokutawudlala indzima lenkhulu ukusita live kutfutfukisa umnotfo. Indvuna yelitiko letemabhizinisi nekutsengiselana umhlonishwa Manqoba Khumalo yithi leSwatini liyisukumele etuli indzaba yekukhanga abahlanyela imali. Umhlonishwa uthi konke labakudzingako bahlanyela imali belive le-Taiwan batawusitakala masinyane.
When we say Eswatini is ready for business, when we say Eswatini is an export-led economy, what we mean is that we run with speed, we run with urgency. That is why His Majesty has made this clarion call for where as our driving theme as the government of Eswatini.
Budlelwane emkhatsini welive leSwatini kanye nale-Taiwan sebuneminyaka leyengcako ku-50. Kule minyaka le-Taiwan lesekele leSwatini kutebhizinisi, gesi kanye nekuletsa tinkampani leticashe sive kulokunye. Live le-Taiwan litawuvula indzawo yekukhicita i-Taiwanese Industrial Park ePhocweni letawucasha sive lesingetulu kwa-10,000 uma seyiphelile. Lobikako nguNelson Dlangamandla nginaDerek Msibi kanye naSikhumbuzo Mavimbela eZulwini.
Sitabuka tihloko kunati lethambe embili temidlalo umqhudelwano wemidlalo wematubane welidolobha leMbabane sewutoba ke imarathon ngalokuphelele njengoba bewusolo uyi-half marathon. Lokhu kuvele uma kusukunyiswa kalokusemthethweni nomqhudelwano walonyaka lapho khona indvuna yetemidlalo beyimelelwe ngumabhalane lomncane etiko, indvuna yetemadolobha, indvuna yetekuvakasha kanye ke nameya welidolobha laseMbabane bebayingcenye yalomcimbi. Lokusukunyiswa kwalomqhudelwano walonyaka bewubanjelwe ehhotela le-Hilton eMbabane. Kanti-ke ngakulokunye Olympia Africa Volleyball Mlondi Mathebula locecesha licembu le-Olympia Africa lemidlalo we-volleyball uthi kulomnyaka uva ngathi batilungiselele kahle futhi-ke balungele kuchudzelana kumchudzelwano lohlelwa licembu le-Phoenix longenelwa ngemacembu alapha ekhaya kanye-ke nalawo labuya eveni leLesotho kanye nelaseNingizimu Afrika. Mathebula bekhuluma uma lolonga lelicembu ye-Olympia Africa kalobamba. Sibeke lapho tindzaba tethu tesiswata sita bahlola emakethe uma sibuya notsile sithole ukuphathela i-interview.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna senze ukukhicita lokusembili.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Very good morning once again and welcome back to the program. Onto this now. Eswatini, like many nations, faces unique challenges and opportunities in promoting breastfeeding, with World Breastfeeding commencing tomorrow under the theme Prioritize Breastfeeding, Create Sustainable Support Systems. Now is the time to highlight the need for advocacy, community education and healthcare infrastructure to improve breastfeeding rates. I am joined by Program Manager at the Eswatini National Nutrition Council, Snigetiwe Zwane. Very good morning to you, Mangweni, and thank you for joining us in the studio today. Now, I'd like to start here. A report from the FAO suggests that only 44% of infants worldwide are exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months, far below the 2030 goal target of 60%. Why does breastfeeding matter, and specifically within the first hour of birth?
Okay, thank you very much, Notile. Good morning to you and good morning to the whole nation. It's another time. It's time once again where we commemorate the World Breastfeeding Week, and as you've said, it's a time where we are actually emphasizing on the importance of breastfeeding. So, like you said, 44% globally, but for us as Eswatini, we were at some point, above the 60%, where we were at 63.8% as a country. However, the breastfeeding rates have dropped. We are now at 54%, and it's not a good thing for us. So exclusive breastfeeding is very important, especially you spoke on the early initiation of breastfeeding within the first hour. That is important because it has been seen that actually is important to ensure the successful breastfeeding, because most of the time, if you start early, within the hour, then the milk production now begins, and that actually helps in terms of the bonding between the mother and the child. So it's very important during that hour, because as we've said, that it has been seen as the most important step in ensuring that a mother successfully breastfeeds.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had attained the goal of 60%, and then there was a decline.
There's a decline. Yeah.
What are the reasons behind that?
All right. There are so many reasons behind that. Breastfeeding on its own. That is why I think our theme this year, creating sustainable and support systems, it is not only about just breastfeeding a child, but it requires a lot of support in every aspect, support within the family, support within the community, because as women, you know that we meet somehow and then we start influencing each other on our past experiences. I had difficulty breastfeeding. Now I'll tell you that no, you're not going to be able to breastfeed as well, so you might just as well introduce, you know, the infant formula. So, and then also in terms of work, a number of our women who are of reproductive age are actually employed. So it requires that support even within the employers, even within the work environment, so that by the time I return to work, I'm able to express my milk and store it somewhere in the fridge in the workplace, so that I take it home with me and continue giving my milk that exclusive, breast milk throughout the entire period of exclusive breastfeeding. Right. So those are some of the challenges that we come across. And of course, we still have the issue, our women are still a bit scared to breastfeed, especially in relation to HIV. So HIV positive women, as you know, that the country has really done so well. You just get tested and then you're provided with ART. And then it requires that the woman continues continues with exclusive breastfeeding. So some of them are still afraid that if I exclusively breastfeed, if I continue to breastfeed, then I'll be, transferring the HIV to my child. So those are the issues, those are some of the issues that they come across. And of course, you find that there's some information that they're exposed to. We're living in the era of abundant information, internet and all that. Some of their social influencers will tell them that no, it's not possible to exclusively breastfeed. So those are some of the things that actually influence our women in terms of breastfeeding, and that actually affects our breastfeeding rates. Right. So it's a plethora of issues everywhere. That is why we're talking about creating sustainable support systems. Because in that way, we know that if the woman is supported in every aspect, employers, family, even church, because when I go to church and I come with my child exclusively breastfeeding, and then I see somebody else who I look up to holding a bottle of infant formula, then I would be indirectly influenced. And especially if I see that the baby looks a bit, chubby and beautiful and all that, then those are some of the things that actually affect the breastfeeding.
Okay. This decline implies that we're not meeting the UN SDGs 2 and 3, zero hunger and good health and well-being. In the long term, what impact does this then have on us?
All right. So when you talk about breastfeeding, yes, it is so good because it prevents the malnutrition. So zero hunger, SDG 3 and SDG 2. Zero hunger, SDG 1 and SDG 3. Those are the key indicators that we feed into, the sustainable development goals that we feed to. But they are... It's just summarized. So under SDG 1, for example, the zero hunger, it implies that there shouldn't be any stunting, any wasting, any micronutrient deficiencies. So if you look at exclusive breastfeeding, or breastfeeding being the basic or the most important most important way of feeding, just at the first in the first few months of life, then it means that we are now leaving our children susceptible to those malnutrition issues and all that. So as you know, that malnutrition now then impacts on the SDG 3, good health and well-being.
Yes,
so
and
if
growth.
I have malnutrition now, it means I'm going to be sick, I'll be prone to infections, I'll be prone to diarrhea and all that. So in the long run, it's not just only about me choosing not to breastfeed my child, but it also impacts on the future development of the child, on the future, even in terms of productivity, because a stunted child, a child who has malnutrition, will be stunted, and then the stunting will lead to poor cognitive development. It's a plethora of other things that only arise from not exclusively breastfeeding.
Right.
Maybe another example would be NCDs.
Okay.
NCDs, it has been seen that, if you focus on proper maternal and infant and child feeding, then it prevents NCDs in the future.
Right.
So we're faced with NCDs because we have been failing to breastfeed our children.
While on that, solutions to stunting and malnutrition require strengthening the health system and creating an enabling environment for nutritional programming. This includes scaling up the baby-friendly hospital initiative. Yes. Are our health facilities fully equipped to support breastfeeding mothers, including counseling and lactation?
Okay. We are doing the best that we can as the National Nutrition Council to build capacity for our healthcare workers. So as it is last year, through support from the Health System Strengthening Project funded by World Bank, we actually revised our baby-friendly hospital initiative guidelines, and then we went on to conduct trainings for the facilities. Yes, so we have been building capacity, so it is just a matter of now providing that mentoring and supportive supervision. That is what we're doing right now. So yes, our facilities are and healthcare workers are actually have that capacity to support mothers. However, there's still a need because, as you know, in a hospital facility, you cannot close the whole facility so that you conduct a training. So you do it in groups. So you find that the time, and we always prioritize the areas which are mainly involved in terms of baby-friendly hospital initiatives, such as maybe the maternity, the outpatient department, and even the ANC department, where our mothers go to during ANC. During pregnancy. So we target those first, and then we move to the rest of the facility, the rest of the departments. So it is very important to then continue training because there are rotations, there are transfers, and even some of our healthcare workers have actually left the country. So you find that the people that you've trained have now gone. So that is why it is very necessary that we have continuous trainings. Yes, of course.
I read up on the multiple indicator cluster survey of 2023 suggesting that early initiation, especially in some regions, like War, it's lower. At the time, it was 37% compared to 52.2% in the Lubombo region. What are the health implications of the statistics? Why is it that early initiation is a struggle in some parts of the country compared to others?
What we've seen, there's a time where there was a rise in actually in the ways in which in cesarean sections, for example, because a cesarean section now means I will not, within an hour, it's almost impossible, just conducting that skin-to-skin contact as well as the early initiation to breastfeeding. So those are some of the issues. And also, early initiation requires that, you prepare the mother way before, like during pregnancy, so that by the time, I encourage this mother to put the child on skin to skin, and then you start breastfeeding, she knows exactly what needs to be done. So one of the mistakes that we're making as a council, or it's due to actually limited resources, we are focusing mainly on the hospitals and health centers where we provide maternity services. So now what we're doing is now concentrating on the clinics as well, because that is where our women go for the ANC. ANC. So when they go for ANC, they should get all the information that they need, such that by the time they get to a health facility or to a hospital, they're now prepared and know exactly what is expected of them. So that, for example, young women, our young moms, you know, if you now take this baby, this completely scary
new creature,
yes, new creature, and you place it on my chest with the fluids, covered in fluids and all that. Like, some of them literally just jump and are scared of that experience.
Yeah.
So that is why you find that it is very important. It is very difficult to initiate that. So, however, the early initiation is very important, because once you establish that relationship, that, you know, that system, or that breastfeeding system between the mother and the infant, then you know that by the time they're discharged from the hospital, then it becomes easy. And
Right.
maybe another thing that we are faced with, you know, when we have, ideally, these women should be discharged having been assessed in terms of whether they're able to breastfeed properly. So you find that due to the high volumes of women giving birth to children in the facilities, there isn't that much time, and of course accompanied by staff shortages. The early initiation and the, you know, skin to skin requires a proper guidance
Maternal
from
education,
yes, guidance, even guidance in terms of being there, support the healthcare care worker being there and supporting that woman in the ward after birth. You know, so due to staff shortages, we find that the time I'm supposed to monitor and assist this woman, there's another woman who needs my assistance in terms of giving birth right now. So I have to rush and leave everything and go and join the other one. So those are some of the things. It's a plethora of issues that are out there. However, we still emphasize the fact that our women should be supported to breastfeed, and by the time they're discharged, we should know that the breastfeeding has been fully established and it will be successful.
Right. Just for the benefit of the viewer, ANC, you're referring to antenatal
care. I'm sorry.
Let's get the clarity. Right. So there's also a need for maternal education.
Yes.
Okay. Breast milk substitutes. Let's get into that one. Mothers often face the pressures to switch to instant formulas. You know, I have to give birth, I have to go for maternity leave, but then I have to come back to work. The widespread use of bottle feeding and infant formula, is it a concern?
It is a concern. Like I said, one of the systems that we really need to work with is in terms of supporting those breastfeeding women who are working. It's so difficult. It's so difficult for these women. That is why now you find that they introduce infant formula. It's a really widespread concern, because even in terms of our malnutrition cases, we see quite a number of malnutrition cases, especially below 6 months, which is not supposed to happen. In other countries, it begins above that, because now we should be exclusively breastfeeding our children. So you find that these women are now forced, they feel forced to introduce formula, because if I work here, if I live here in Babane and I have to, you know, get on a bus to Eswatini where I work, if I use public transport, it will be difficult for me to come back, even if my employer gives me a breastfeeding hour. So it will be difficult for me to come back. You know, I think what they're afraid of is in terms of how difficult it is. So that is why it requires a lot of support. That is why they end up introducing or choosing infant formula. And unfortunately, due to the economy, even I do not afford using infant formula, because it has its own way of using. If you're using infant formula, it means that you have to prepare, you always have to have that water boiled, having been boiled and set aside, and after each feed, if the infant leaves any formula in the bottle, I have to spill that, so that for the next feed I prepare new feed. So it's a number of things that are very difficult, and in terms of the economy, if you look at the infant formula, it's very expensive. Then you find that there's some brands which are so cheap, and affordable for these women, only to find that in terms of nutritional value,
They don't offer
they
much.
don't offer much.
Okay.
So that is why you then find that a lot of our children are in infant formula and have diarrhea and malnutrition.
The instant formula, should it be introduced to infants at all? And if it should, when?
Infant formula is can be used for specific reasons. For example, if the mother passes away, of course, what else would the baby consume? Yes, yes. And if the mother has any other conditions that prevent her from actually breastfeeding, then those are the cases. But it should be done under prescription after having, sat down with a healthcare worker, with a professional who will be guiding that mother in terms of which infant formula would be suitable for that. But in terms of guiding on which infant formula, they'll be looking at the medical condition of the child. For example, there are some children who are allergic, who do not tolerate certain levels of proteins, who do not tolerate animal protein. So obviously that child would have to be introduced to something that is soy-based, for example. So those are some of the places or some of the instances where you can actually use infant formula. However, every woman should at first be encouraged to breastfeed. And then if there are any challenges like the ones that I've mentioned, then we'll be guided on the infant formula. Otherwise, every woman is supposed to be able to breastfeed. There's a doctor that I normally work with, a pediatrician, who will say, as long as you have a breast, then it's possible you can breastfeed. Because even in terms of the supply, you'd have to assess why is the supply a bit low. Why is the milk not really flowing, and assisted for that? That is why we cannot sit women who are facing challenges in breastfeeding together in one room and just giving them tips. It has to be individualized, customized information and guidance.
I was about to get into that one. We have, some common misconceptions and cultural beliefs around breastfeeding, such as not breastfeeding because the breast will sag, or that the breast size kind of determines the milk supply. Have these have had an impact on the breastfeeding rates, and how can we demystify these?
Of course, that has really had an impact on the breastfeeding, because if you note the time around which when we did the assessment in terms of checking the exclusive breastfeeding, we found that it was maybe around the COVID. And if you note that there was a number of adolescent pregnancies. So of course, teenagers, young people don't want to breastfeed due to the fact that they don't want their breasts to sag. However, after pregnancy, you immediately start, your breasts just change from there. And then, of course, the other issue was the issue of
the breast size.
The breast size. The breast size has nothing to do with how much milk you can produce.
Right.
Yes.
Right. That's all the time we had. Thank you very much for coming to the studio. That was Eswatini. We were just discussing, the health benefits of breastfeeding ahead of the World Breastfeeding Week. Now, let's go for have a look at our traffic update.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Welcome back to the program and on to our traffic update with Officer Setlo Dlamini. Very good morning to you, Ngozi. It's Thursday, the 31st of July. How are our roads looking this morning?
It's a very good morning to you. Unjani Sithole namuhla ekuseni?
Sengabe emgwaqweni nje kuhambe kanjani namhla ekuseni?
Kuyahambeka emgwaqweni yelive ikakhulu nje ke sesihlolile lesikubonile kungaba ngito tibane dawo phela umgwaqo lekutona tilapha eRemand Center letingasebenzi ngaphandle kwaloko awu kungaba kunxusa nje ke kwekuthi lapha kuna umgwaqo wethu phecelezi sewubika nga-MRA loqhamuka khona iBig Bend ute ngakhona utohlangana na MR3 awu ukuthi sesibonile cishe emahlandla kusukela ekuseni kuze kuyohlaya insimbi yesiphohlongo awu ukuthi imoto iyabonakala letinkulu tibathi nengi letithatha tojoyina yena MR3 kungaba kunxusa nje ke ukuthi awu nangabe utawuqhamuka kulowo mgwaqo loyo yiba nako kubeketela kwathi sephela kwekuthi lezi moto leti sibika nje ngaloko ukuthi sekubonakele ukuthi ngalesikhathi lesi tivamise kuba dinengi kakhulu nawe ke sale sewulungiselela ukuthi nangabe uhamba umane ukhweshe kuso noma usheshe uhambe uze unganoba nabo ukukhinyabeteka elibonjeni sibonile lapha kusuka lapha kubolukhula ubheke khona kubo Mbolonjeni naboshoba imfuyo iyabonakala inengi kuleso stretch leso kanike nasithatha nangumgwaqo losuka la emafutheni ubheke khona kubomgunyana kubomadlanga empisi wenge kubomphisi farm out inkomo iyabonakala lapho kani nawo ama-potholes akhona ngaphinde ngibalule lapha eBig Bend awu siyawubona umoba selo uwenjalo kanti phela sesike sazama ukukhulumisana nabo labantu abawubuthako ukuthi nawaphuma lamaloli abamane bawuqheshise awujube kuze ukuthi unganohamba uwala emgwaqweni kepha ke awuvele nasemasontweni kuhlela kufinyayelwa onke amalanga kuze ukuthi nabo phela abantu bagcine baphendvukile kungaba nguloko nje ke lesinako elangeni lanamuhla sethembe ukuthi eMaswati ayawuba nako kuphepha asayisebenzisa imigwaqo yelize Sithole.
Thank you very much, Ngozi, for that update. That was Setlo Dlamini giving us the traffic update this morning. You are encouraged to drive with caution and safely. So now we'll go for a break. When we come back, news at 7 coming through.
I know.
It's risky, but I've done it several times.
Guys, bafana bebola barong agiwa kakhona.
Machara yakho nabasafaka snake okhope babele.
But my friends can go to hell.
To this day, I've never seen that man.
You don't know him like I do. I know it's petty.
I don't know what it is, but I can jump. Well, okay, yes, I've seen handcuffs where they were not supposed to be.
This is the English News Bulletin right here on Kusile Breakfast Show. His Excellency the Prime Minister Miso Dlamini says poverty is one of the leading causes of human trafficking. The Premier says job creation and economic growth can be a solution to this. The Premier said this during the commemoration of the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons held at the George Hotel in Manzini on Wednesday.
The United Nations Food Programme says 70% of Eswatini in rural areas live below the poverty line and 25% live in extreme poverty. These locals are vulnerable to being trafficked, as said during the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons, that vulnerability makes people susceptible to trafficking.
Human trafficking is a crime that robs individuals of their dignity, safety, and future. Victims are coerced into forced labor, sexual exploitation, and other forms of abuse that have no place in our country or anywhere else in the world. As His Majesty's government, we acknowledge that Eswatini is not immune. Trafficking strives in silence. We must create safe spaces for victims to come forward. I encourage all citizens to report suspected trafficking cases, whether they occur in towns, in rural communities, homes, or workplaces. Reporting saves lives.
Human trafficking is a money-spinning business, as United Nations resident coordinator George Wachira says. People make profits of hundreds of billions of American dollars.
It's bringing in about 150 billion in profits, US dollars, 150 billion US dollars in profit to the people that are carrying out this crime. So it's a crime that appears to pay and pay very well. We must remind ourselves as we commemorate this day that behind these figures and the organization behind these figures and their dark sophistication are lives. Lives of people, children, women, boys, men, that are forever altered as a result of the experiences that they go through.
Government has committed itself to doing everything possible to protect eMaswati from being trafficked. The government has also said the justice system should speedily work on human trafficking cases, as justice delayed, as justice denied. For Eswatini TV News, Temgosi Mavimbela, Manzini.
The Deputy Prime Minister says there's a great need for the elderly grants to be improved so that they may be able to cope with the ever-increasing cost of living. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister made these remarks when responding to questions of the Senate Portfolio Committee members, where she also added that the current amount received by the elderly only buys them little food.
The government of Taiwan continues to support Eswatini's education sector, this time contributing 6.3 million emalangeni towards the construction of a boys' hostel at the St. Joseph's Mission School. The new facility is set to be inclusive, catering to children with disabilities. Speaking at the launch, the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Thuli Dladla, commended the long-standing contribution of missionaries in advancing education in Eswatini.
Kufanele ukuthi umntwana simbone ukuthi usesikolweni. Kufanele ukuthi umntwana simbone ukuthi akalambi. Kufanele umntwana simbone ukuthi uhleli kahle. Leni nangu umliba phela lona lweni.
The Deputy Prime Minister says that it is important for children with disabilities to be embraced and loved, as that will provide them with a nurturing environment which enables them to grow in love and become caring citizens. Dladla says that if they fail to meet their needs, they risk creating a generation of individuals who may turn to crime or become abusive. The Catholic Bishop Jose Luis says that the church does not receive external funding, as it relies on donations from the church in Eswatini to assist in the school.
We no longer receive any financial support from abroad for this project. Still, the Catholic Church in the Kingdom every year puts aside $250,000 Malangeni, 250,000 Malangeni, just to support the running of the boarding house. And that's one of the many projects we run in the country. Our commitment is clear, but it's not enough, and it is not easy.
The Minister of Education and Training was represented by Ilungelo Nhlengetwa, who reaffirmed the ministry's commitment to working alongside the Deputy Prime Minister in promoting the welfare and education of children with disabilities. The construction of the hostel is expected to be completed by December 2025. Reporting Sondomlangeni, pictures from the Deputy Prime Minister's Communication Office.
The Minister of Finance, Honorable Rekenberg, says that the money collected through taxes by the Eswatini Revenue Service is insufficient to cover the national budget. This year, the target for tax collection is 16.5 billion emalangeni, while the country requires 32.3 billion emalangeni to fully fund its budgetary needs.
The Minister of Finance announced that the Eswatini Revenue Service is expected to collect 16.5 billion emalangeni in taxes this year. This projection has raised public questions that if the country is capable of collecting such a significant amount, why does it still need to take on more loans? In response, the Minister of Finance, Honorable Rekenberg, explained that Eswatini is able to access loans because its gross domestic product is considered healthy. The
fact that our GDP is now growing as a country is really helping us to be able to actually take a bit more debt on board. So we try and stay about the 40 to 41% debt to GDP ratio, meaning that the affordability of repaying the debt remains the same as what it is. But the nice thing is now with our GDP growing, as you know, this year we're even projecting a 7.9% GDP growth, and even if it isn't that high, but it's still around the 5 or 6 percentages, it is still very high for the region, so we're really having a very decent GDP growth at the moment, and that's meaning that we can now take on a bit more debt, because it means that our debt to GDP ratio remains about the same if we take on about 3 billion emalangeni's debt. And so that more or less explains where the money comes from for our budget. Again, now you'd say, where does so much money get spent on? You know, it doesn't feel like in a country like we're spending 32 billion. But what we must keep in mind, and that is first of all the wage bill.
Out of the national budget, approximately 25 billion emalangeni is allocated to recurring expenditure money spent on non-tangible goods and services such as administration, utilities, and operations. Capital expenditure, which goes towards infrastructure and development projects, amounts to 7.3 billion emalangeni. The government spends around 10 billion emalangeni on wages alone. Additional 15 billion emalangeni is used outside of salaries to fund services such as transportation, subvented entities like the Eswatini Revenue Service. Currently, Eswatini faces a debt burden of 36 billion emalangeni. Reporting Sondomlangeni Babane.
21 Taiwan companies have invested over 1 billion emalangeni in the country. This was revealed by Ambassador Jeremy Liang during the Eswatini Taiwan Business Seminar at the Happy Valley, Eswatini. A delegation of Taiwanese business leaders is currently in the country to explore areas of investment.
Taiwanese businesses have already established 21 companies in Eswatini, operating in sectors such as textile and garment, cotton manufacturing, and plastics, etc. Their total investment has already exceeded $100 million and has created jobs approximately 13,000.
Head of the Taiwanese business leaders delegation says they are ready to help Eswatini in economic development.
With the full support of the Taiwanese government, I'm confident that our companies will align with government policy and priority to investing in Eswatini.
The Director General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the Republic of China on Taiwan promises that they will continue to support Eswatini in projects of economic development.
Let us seize this valuable opportunity to jointly lay a solid foundation for closer economic and trade relationship between Taiwan and Eswatini.
The Minister for Commerce, Industry and Trade, Honorable Mangoba Khumalo, has reaffirmed the country's commitment to fostering a business-friendly environment.
When we say Eswatini is ready for business, when we say Eswatini is an export-led economy, what we mean is that we run with speed, we run with urgency. That is why His Majesty has made this clarion call for where as our driving theme as the government of Eswatini.
Eswatini and Taiwan relations span over 50 years, and Taiwan has invested in different projects in the country, including electricity, funding businesses, textile, as well as the recent Taiwanese industrial park, which will come with over 10,000 employment opportunities. Reporting, Nelson Dlangamandla, Derek Msibi, and Sikhumbuzo Mavimbela, Ezulwini.
Vusimnisi of Narrowpath Investments, a company specializing in timber and export packaging, has been named the overall winner of the Entrepreneur of the Year award for the whole region. Nisi received the honor during a ceremony held at Sibane Hotel in Ezulwini, where the minister announced that 80 applications had been received from the region.
Mnisi says perseverance is what has led him to be the overall winner. He explains that this is not the first time he took part in these awards, but he was unlucky in the previous attempt. He says he will use the prize money to expand his business.
Last year I did join, and unfortunately I was never nominated. So luckily this year I was nominated. So I think the effort that I've put in maybe has brought me to
The Minister for Commerce, Industry and Trade, Honorable Manqoba Khumalo, says government is actively finding and providing solutions to the challenges faced by Eswatini entrepreneurs, as well as creating platforms for them to thrive and contribute meaningfully to the country's vision of becoming an export-led economy.
Of the 412 applicants that have been received in the nation this year, we are happy to report that the Hoho region had 87 applications. We are proud to see that there were 65 female entrepreneurs who entered for the competition, and we also had 46 young people that have stepped up in the Hoho region to compete this year.
First National Bank's Chief Executive Thokozani Dlamini says supporting entrepreneurship is embedded in the bank's core values and long-term strategy to build sustainable communities.
As FNB Eswatini, our role in this movement is not merely financial. We are proud to sponsor not only the prestigious National Grand Prize, which is a single cab van, but also several regional awards in categories that reflect our vision for an inclusive and future-ready economy.
SEDCO Chief Executive Ketiwe Mhlanga says they are impressed with the level of commitment to growth shown by local small-scale businesses.
We're seeing that innovation is at place. We're seeing creativity in place. We're seeing growth coming from our entrepreneurs.
In total, there were 9 winners, each receiving 10,000 emalangeni. Old Mutual supported the Entrepreneur of the Year Awards with 50,000 emalangeni. Categories of winners included Outstanding Street Vendor, Outstanding Business Owned by a Person with a Disability, Outstanding Women-Owned Businesses, and Outstanding Agribusiness. Reporting, Nelson Dlangamandla, Derek Msibi, Ezulwini.
Learners who have speech impairment or impediments like stammering should get a medical report stating their condition and further submit it to their teachers. This follows the commencement of oral exams.
The Exams Council of Eswatini trained examiners and teachers on conducting oral exams. This is aimed at standardizing the oral exams countrywide. CPS Bia, the product manager, humanities at IKESWA, says there was the need to train them so that they fully understand the oral exams in detail.
For this workshop, we felt it prudent as IKESWA to ask teachers to come so that we recap on how we conduct our oral assessments. So we had a recap of the procedures and trying to bring up to speed again new teachers that might not have had an opportunity in the past to do the oral exam so that they know what the oral assessment is about and they apply the procedures as stated in our regulations. And so that the assessments are standardized and they're the same for all candidates in the country.
Learners who have speech impairment and some stammering, how will they sit for the oral exams and how will they be assisted?
Such candidates are well taken care of We have access arrangements that are done for candidates that have certain impairments, like the speech impairments you are referring to. So those candidates should have a medical report and they should apply via Ekeswa so that they can be either be exempted or maybe the medical report can suggest a better solution as to how to handle such issues.
The oral exams haven't started thus far, thus the need to train the teachers ahead. Reporting IMKN MCB with Leleti Mhlanga and Nompendilo Shabalala at St. Michael's, Manzini.
Singapore doctors have partnered with the Ministry of Health and Eswatini Private Hospital to provide free medical care to Eswatini. This program started on Monday and is expected to end on Friday.
The work being done by these doctors continues as they treat all patients arriving at the hospital, from infants to the elderly. They are treating various illnesses, conducting general consultations, providing surgeries, gynecology, general physician work, and dental problems. Dr. Maria Ellert explains the purpose of this outreach.
We're quite busy. See, people are now coming more and more and more. See, on Monday, we will call, not so many people knew about us. You see, Tuesday, we were very busy. And today, this morning, we're busy again. You see, we're swamped to see with patients from all over the place.
Dr. Christian Wong expresses deep gratitude for the support they have received. She thanks the Ministry of Health and the Eswatini Private Hospital for collaborating with them on this initiative.
We're really grateful for the Ministry of Health in giving us this great support that make this medical mission successful and that it can run very smoothly. And we would also like to give a great appreciation to EPA for their great support because their staff have been very enthusiastic and passionate and very helpful in supporting all our logistics.
Eswatini Private Hospital CEO Dr. Thandeka Khanyile also expresses gratitude for the work done by the doctors.
We've provided facilities for the work to be done, and we've also offered them our staff to assist in the work that is being done currently.
The free medical treatment started on Monday and is expected to end this Friday. Reporting is Leleti Mhlanga with Giani Msibi and Nombendulo Shabalala, Eswatini.
And in the international segment, Ode Hathaleen, a 31-year-old Palestinian activist, teacher and filmmaker behind the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land, was shot dead by an Israeli settler near the village of al-Kher in the southern Hebron Hills. Witnesses say settler Yinon Levi, previously under EU and US sanctions, opened fire during a confrontation sparked by land seizure and bulldozer activity. Hathaleen fell after being hit in the chest and later died in hospital.
Violence in al-Kher village close to Hebron. An Israeli from Carmel settlement in the south of the West Bank brandishes a pistol. Yinon Levi later said he opened fire, fearing his life was in danger. The confrontation left its victims. 2 people wounded and 1 killed. Oda Hathaleen, a 31-year-old teacher who'd worked on the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land. It shed light on the lives of residents living in what the Israeli army has declared a military zone.
The village stands in the way of the Carmel settlement's expansion from the east, so the objective is to get rid of the population through intimidation and pressure. The settlers act without any accountability or deterrence, and they do what they want to do.
Israel says that construction had been authorized, with settlers saying dozens of locals came to throw stones. But according to al-Kher's residents, a bulldozer had sought to cut off the village's water and electricity earlier in the day. It's seen here moving towards the village. It's not Yinon Levy's first run-in with Palestinians either. He's still under sanction from European, British and Canadian authorities for leading attacks on Palestinians and their property, with Biden-era travel bans and asset freezes lifted by Donald Trump earlier this year.
If the sanction on this settler had been enforced, he wouldn't have been able to kill an innocent person. He left 3 children behind.
Violence in the West Bank has only continued to mount since the war in Gaza broke out nearly 2 years ago.
A severe humanitarian crisis is unfolding in northwest Kenya, where refugee camps housing people fleeing conflict in South Sudan and the DRC are nearing collapse. The crisis was triggered by a sudden halt in U.S. funding as the Trump administration slashes foreign aid. Protests have since erupted in and around the camps, with rising tensions leading to outbreaks of violence.
In northwest Kenya, these mobile food warehouses serve as a crucial lifeline for thousands of refugees. They're now nearly empty. This week, the tents became the site of violent confrontations between security forces and hungry protesters, with at least 2 reported killed by live bullets.
These NGOs that have been working into education, healthcare, food distribution, including World Food Program, all of them now they're really down. They're actually frozen. If nobody's coming to help, all of us we are going to be dying.
Mounting hunger is driving increasing unrest in the Kakuma and Kalobei refugee camps. The settlements currently host more than 300,000 refugees fleeing conflicts in South Sudan, Ethiopia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The food shortages are a result of the withdrawal of U.S. humanitarian aid. One of Donald Trump's first acts upon returning to the White House in January was to dismantle USAID, cutting off some $63 billion in international development aid and humanitarian assistance. 6 months later, the domino effects are becoming clear. The UN's World Food Program previously relied on the U.S. for 70% of the funding for its Kenya operations.
This is a crisis. It's a slow starvation. And this is where the world really needs to look at this situation carefully and reinstate funding for the refugee operations in Kenya.
WFP rations at Kakuma have now been cut to just 1/3 of the UN's recommended daily caloric intake. Aid workers warn the camp risks an impending famine in the coming months.
A powerful magnitude 8.8 earthquake struck off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula on July 30 this year, triggering tsunami warnings across the Pacific Rim, including Japan, Hawaii, Alaska, and several Central and South American countries. While initial alerts led to evacuations, many were later downgraded after no major damage was reported. Monitoring continues due to potential aftershocks.
Sirens blare across Honolulu as tsunami waves start hitting Hawaii. Lifeguards have told beachgoers to evacuate, and authorities are urging people to keep calm as warnings cause major traffic jams on the island.
This is a very serious event. We have Black Hawks activated. We have high water vehicles ready to go. So we will be able to rescue people, but please do not put yourself in harm's way. Make sure you actually evacuate right now.
Hawaii and the rest of the Pacific is on high alert after an 8.8 magnitude earthquake struck Russia's remote eastern Kamchatka Peninsula. And although it's the 6th strongest earthquake the world has ever recorded, the damage so far is minimal. This preschool is one of the few buildings damaged by the tremor.
At this kindergarten, the facade of the building collapsed. Thank God no one was injured. There were no children in the building. It's just been damaged.
Residents also experienced power outages and a tsunami with a height of at least 3 meters, which wiped out a fish factory. Tsunami warnings were also issued for parts of the Philippines, Indonesia and Japan, which are still haunted by the memory of the devastating earthquake of 2011.
Please evacuate immediately to a safe place, such as higher ground.
4,000 workers have also been evacuated from Fukushima nuclear power plant while the company monitors it remotely. Meanwhile, people in Hokkaido were seen sheltering on roofs. It was one of the first places to report tsunami waves, and though they've not been as big as the 3 meters initially forecast, authorities have warned bigger ones could be on the way.
The Trump administration said on Tuesday it will rescind the long-standing finding that greenhouse gas emissions endanger human health, removing the legal foundation for all U.S. greenhouse gas regulations. If finalized, the repeal would end current limits on greenhouse gas pollution from vehicle tailpipes, power plant smokestacks, and other sources, and hamper future U.S. efforts to combat global warming.
House calls it the largest deregulatory action in U.S. history. The Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, wants to rescind the 2009 endangerment finding. Rooted in science, it gives the U.S. government its authority to regulate greenhouse gases as they pose a danger to people and the planet. Repealing this finding would remove limits on how much pollution vehicles and power plants can emit. According to the Trump administration, it's both costly and overreaching.
And then they say that climate change endangers public health and welfare. They ended up making predictions about the science that in many respects were not just pessimistic, they turned out not to be true.
Opponents of the plan say not only will this effectively kill the U.S.'s ambitions to combat climate change, but it endangers lives.
If you have a transition to cleaner vehicles, it doesn't just help address climate change, but it reduces smog, it reduces particulate emissions. And so those are all things that have very direct and immediate effects on people's health. If we see this move away from cleaning up the vehicle fleet happen, then you're going to see more asthma attacks, more heart attacks.
The proposals will be subject to a 45-day public comment period, and it's near certain that the EPA will face a legal battle. Since returning to office, Trump withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Agreement for a second time and vowed to expand fossil fuel development.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Tuesday said London would officially recognize a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly in September unless Israel takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza. The move comes on the heels of French President Emmanuel Macron's announcement that France will recognize the state of Palestine at the UN gathering as Israel faces mounting tension over the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza.
As pro-Palestinian protesters demonstrated outside Downing Street on Tuesday, the British Prime Minister was about to announce a major potential change to UK policy.
I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza.
Among those steps, agreeing to a ceasefire, committing to long-term peace, reviving the two-state solution, unblocking aid, and backing down from any talk of annexing the West Bank. And Keir Starmer had words for Hamas in Gaza too.
They must immediately release all of the hostages, sign up to a ceasefire, disarm, and accept that they will play no part in the government of Gaza.
If those steps are met, then the Palestinian Authority could be on course for another vote of Western recognition following France's commitment last week. Israel, however, fast stated it rejected the UK's move, calling it a reward for Hamas. But British authorities have found themselves under increasing pressure in recent days and weeks, with more than 250 British MPs signing a letter in support of Palestinian recognition.
The time has come for a ceasefire. The time has come to see those hostages released, and the time has come to abate the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza, to get them the aid and the medical equipment and supplies that they need.
The death toll in Gaza now stands at over 60,000 since Hamas's October 7th attack that sent Israel to
In sports, the Mbabane City Marathon has now officially become a full marathon after previously being a half marathon. This was revealed during the official launch of this year's edition of the event, in attendance with the Minister of Sports, represented by the Under-Secretary, the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, the Minister of Tourism and Environmental Affairs, as well as the Mayor of Mbabane. The launch event was held at the Hilton Hotel in Mbabane. In volleyball, Mlondi Matebula, the coach of the Olymp Africa volleyball team, says this year it feels like they are well prepared and ready to compete in the tournament organized by the Phoenix team, which features both local teams and teams from Lesotho and South Africa. Matebula was speaking during a training session with the Olymp Africa team ahead of their participation this coming weekend. And that's all the news I had for you at this hour. We'll catch a break. When we come back, we're in conversation with the Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Mandla Chawuka. Stay tuned.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqida lokusembili.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Right, welcome back. It's 33 minutes after 7. Thank you so much for staying with us here on Kusile Breakfast Show. We are getting into a very important conversation now. But just to premise it, let's give you this ground. In the southern belt of the kingdom, a crisis has struck at the core of rural life, foot and mouth disease. It has disrupted not just livestock health, but it has disrupting local economies, national exports, and the food chain itself. Yet, even as containment zones are enforced and vaccinations are being rolled out, the Ministry of Agriculture says it is looking beyond the crisis toward recovery, reform, as well as resilience. Now, from millions and millions of emalangeni. That's the investment into commercial farming, to targeted youth empowerment in agribusiness, as well as a renewed push for food sovereignty. There is a shift that is happening underway, one that goes beyond veterinary response to reposition Eswatini as a self-reliant, climate-smart agricultural economy. This morning we are joined by the Honourable Minister of Agriculture, Mandla Chauka, who is going to unpack the country's response to the outbreak, as well as, of course, the broader national agenda for the sector. Thank you so much for making time. I remember we had our very first conversation just a day after you assumed office, and we really appreciated that the clarion call of Ngwe was really taken to heed. Minister, I know it must, be frustrating to walk into office and have an agenda for development and have it, entirely halted by an outbreak. It's pretty much you're reminiscent of what happened during COVID-19. Such things happen, but I just want to get your general feel of how this has frustrated you. It's foot and mouth.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. And yes, you are correct. I remember the first interview I had here, and I put out a lot of things that I believe need to be done in the ministry to move it forward. Just to your question, yes, it's a very big frustration for the ministry because it detracts from some of the efforts that we are supposed to be focusing on, or things that we're supposed to be doing. And now we are sort of fighting fires. And those who are in the know in terms of strategic leadership and management is that you are more effective when you are being strategic in your management and in your or movement of the organization. When we have to fight fires, then it takes a lot of effort, it drains you, and it detracts you from the ultimate goal. But such things happen, such is life. You can never say you are not going to have crisis in your life. So we had COVID, now we've got FMD. It's not the first time that we've got FMD in the country. We've had it before, we've dealt with it, but we are dealing with it now. But I'm happy with the response that we are amounting, and also in terms of the fact that we have changed the approaches. But I think we'll get to that discussion.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, speaking of being proactive, we saw the request that you made to Cabinet, requesting for, an amount that wasn't scary at all, if you really think about what the ripple effects of FMD, 39 million, I believe. Yes. And, how appreciative are you with how Cabinet responded to these calls, just understanding the urgency that it requires?
Firstly, I think you are correct. When we had this problem, I think I must remind the nation that it was on the 12th of May that we realized that we might have had an infection in the country. We started doing our tests, and we confirmed that, yes, it was foot and mouth, and we worked out the strain that was in the kingdom. Then, yes, we approached the Cabinet with a budget of about 39 million to mount a response that's going to make sure that we are able to put out the fires firstly and be able to get back to trade within reasonable time. I must therefore appreciate Cabinet for a quick response because they granted us this amount. And then secondly, we needed, as part of the response program, needed to inform certain bodies in the country, and they were all responsive, including the ROAs, the relevant ROA at Kusile. And we also then must extend our gratitude to the NDMA under the Deputy Prime Minister's office, because they were very responsive, and we've been fighting this battle with them, and they're at the forefront of what we do along with us as a ministry. Yeah. And that has helped us to make progress in terms of this fight.
Speaking of the response, let's speak about the response itself now. And it's, when we look at the definition of response, it means the action itself. Yes. The money has been approved. You have made all the necessary measures across the regions. Talk to me about the current status of FMD outbreak in the country right now, as well as the vaccination rollout. Where are we?
Okay, as I've already indicated, we saw this disease on the 12th of May. I think we went public on the 19th or 20th of the same month.
Right.
We were already frantic trying to find vaccinations because we, as part of the planning process, we decided how we're going to respond.
Sure.
There is a number of possible actions that we can take in terms of dealing with this disease. Some of the things that we can do include putting down the animals. But we took a decision that, look, let's approach, because the technology has advanced. We've come to a point whereby the world over no longer rush to putting down animals. Instead, you look at options like vaccination. So find vaccines from Botswana. I think the doses arrived here on the 19th of June. It was a result of intense negotiations, including with South Africa, because the consignments that were already in place were targeted to go to South Africa, but we had to negotiate with South Africa that we get that consignment, they will get the next batch and whatever. So we were able to do that. On the 19th, we got the vaccines. On the 22nd, we started vaccinating. So the idea or the plan was to vaccinate about 50,000 animals. That's the estimate we had, and give them 2 doses. Therefore, we acquired 100,000 doses to deal with this situation. So what has happened up to date is that firstly we had the whole cordon coverage, making sure that the checkpoints and making sure that animals and animal products don't pass through those areas. And then we also made sure that we asked, we must also thank the Ministry of Public Service and CSC for making sure that they allow the quotas cordon guards.
Right.
We got 60 cordon guards to go and monitor and patrol the areas, both on the checkpoints and on the borders between us and South Africa. What has then happened as well is that through the vaccination program has got to a point whereby we've cleared the first doses. So we've vaccinated 45,761 animals.
Wow.
That is the population of animals that we found in that region. After the vaccination, we brand them so that we make sure we don't vaccinate the same animal twice. And then we check during the tip days that all the animals are covered. So what has happened, what has started now this week is the second doses, because there must be a 30-day interval between the first dose and the second dose. So now we are giving them the second dose, and we are happy that although we've had a number of incidences of people trying to smuggle animals, we have not had a situation whereby we have a confirmed case outside the red zone. So we believe and are comfortable that we have contained the disease within that red zone. And because we are doing that, we believe we are in a position to be able to get back to trade in a shorter space of time than probably we would have had if we were having incursions all over the place and all over the country.
Speaking of the time to get back to trade, and you're being diplomatic, I like that you're saying in a very short time. Can we give a give or take estimate of when we can sort of regain Eswatini's FMD free without vaccination status, and how soon we could realistically expect that?
I think diplomatic, yes, but there are 2 stages that are very critical and are very important. The first one is to get back to international trade.
Okay.
You can trade, not necessarily being free from FMD without vaccination. That is a longer term sort of status that you attain over time. But what, in terms of time frames, we set ourselves 6 months from the date of discovering this disease, that we wanted to do everything possible to make sure that we're able to get back to international trade in 6 months from that point. That's because it is the lives of Eswatini that is at stake. There's a number of people who are working in abattoirs and in some places where the income, or the business is actually driven by export trade. So we need, therefore, to be able to get back quickly. So 6 months from that time gives us now 4 months. So our target is that by December, we want to be able to get back to international trade. That is why on a weekly basis, we submit reports to the international world, in the international bodies that control this disease, like the World Organization on Animal Health, which gives them the status of how we're progressing in terms of this fight. We've also gazetted the disease, and we think we are in line to be able to get back to international trade by December. But by maybe mid next year, we can reclaim our status of being free without vaccinations, because we've had that status for quite a long time. It was in 2021 that we had, in 2001 that we had a skirmish of a similar one. So for more than 10 years, we've been free without vaccinations.
Yeah.
We want to get back to that.
I want to credit the tracking systems that you have. Clearly, when you speak, you can see that you have meticulously drawn out tracking systems to make sure that you are able to respond and are able to meet all these aspirations in time. I'm thinking about it, December, 4 months from now. There's probably going to be record-breaking in terms of responding at a very short space of time. But that also speaks to the coordinated, and aligned linkages that you have with all the stakeholders that you're mentioning, which you're saying we're all doing a great job and you are thanking them. But I think all of it goes to waste if these people that you have spoken to lightly and briefly, who try to smuggle even with this system. I want you to speak to those people.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I really would like to plead and beseech the nation that, you see, this thing is like being in a pool. Right. So if we are in a pool and we are underwater, you feel like you want to breathe. So we understand that Eswatini have got ceremonies to do. Some of them want to get married, and some of them want to do that, which involves the movement of animals. But we are just let's just understand that we are under water now. If we try to breathe under this water, we might die. So it's best we peg under the water, we get to a safe place where we can take a deep breath. So that's all we're asking. So please, we've had a number of incidences where we've caught people with goats, with cattle, some of them moving them away from this zone and into places where they could bring the disease. We do have a law, and the law says we're at liberty actually to put these animals down. But because we are sensitive, we don't want to do that. We try and make sure that we respond in a way that's going to be accommodative to these people. But it is illegal to do it. Let's not move the animals. Let's work hand in hand, collaborate to make sure that we're able to save the country. We cannot afford to shoot ourselves in the foot by smuggling animals or any products that are prohibited to move between through certain points.
Yeah. Preparing for this interview, I said, when we ground the interview, I want us to look at 3 C's. That is going to be communication, containment, and coordination. And I think we've covered a good part of the coordination and the containment. But the communication aspect, and this one pains me as a journalist because I know such mechanisms can be halted by misinformation or disinformation, so to speak. How do you plan to respond to such misinformations and disinformations in a time of an outbreak? Because that could be dangerous.
Yeah, we've got a communication structure. That's part of the response program. That communication structure is handled between the ministry and DMA. Right. We actually have numbers that can be called. We've publicized that. We've also gone to the radio, EPIS, and we've got some sort of a play there that is always airing. We also issue communications through our ministries and telling the nation what is happening. But of course, there will always be elements that will start introducing misinformation or distorting the information. We also have a very good communication between ourselves and cabinet to make sure that we update everybody. But it happens. But I think the most important thing is that anybody who wants to verify information and to be sure that is talking to the right people must contact the ministry or contact NDMA. The information will be solid and correct.
And I know that a big part of this development is, obviously the rural economy has been really, really affected. And I acknowledge that you highlighted, the first thing that you mentioned is that when you started making out communication efforts, you did engage traditional leaders.
Yes.
Very important, because beyond these veterinary controls, I suppose traditional authorities have to be brought in, private vets as well as community leaders being more mobilized in this response. But that has to be sustained throughout all the efforts. I want to believe you're doing that.
Certainly, we're doing that. And I think one of the most important things that when we've got an incident, there's a lot of things that we need to learn and be able to put in place contingency measures so that in the future you don't have repeats or you close the gaps that might be visible.
Right.
One of the things we've realized, okay, firstly, maybe let me go back to saying that we are involving everybody that is a stakeholder in this. We started off with the RA, and through the RA we've been able to get chiefs together and get to communities, and we're talking to them and also soliciting ideas from them, because it can never be correct that ingenuity can be restricted to a few individuals. So everybody must contribute and give us ideas in terms of how we can deal with such incidences in the future.
Yeah.
But one of the most important things that I would like to thank is our traditional authorities in terms of Buba Bebo Chief. One of the problems we've realized is that our quarantines are not enough in the country. We only have one functional quarantine at Mapivel. Therefore, if you catch animals being smuggled, for instance, because we say we don't want to put them down, you must take them to the quarantine. But taking an animal from Klambanyatsi to Mapiven is cumbersome, and it's not good even for the farmer. So we've asked them, and they're looking for a piece of land. We want to build a quarantine on the northern side of the country, Bob Klambanyatsi and the rest. We are also going to build a quarantine at Saliche to make sure that we're covering the south. So what I'm trying to say, these are long-term interventions now that are going to make sure that we are able to deal with these things in future, or we're able to respond better. We also have increased the effort to resuscitate our cordon fences. Just yesterday I was talking to the High Commissioner of South Africa, because we used to have an arrangement where we are covering certain portions of the cordon fences, and the South African side was doing the same, covering certain portions. So we need to get back to that, because it seems to have disintegrated slightly over time, and especially with the changes of governments in South Africa. The beauty of Eswatini is that we've got consistency and stability because of the center of power. So we are saying we need to put all these things in place so that in future we respond better. But the other thing one would like to appreciate is the response from some retired veterinary officers. We asked them to come back because this was a national problem.
Right.
They responded positively. They've come on board because we needed to have all hands on deck.
Right.
And I think it's working well for us.
Officially declared a national emergency, by the way, I think.
Yes, it was an emergency, not a disaster, but an emergency.
It's an emergency, 100%. And perhaps before I move into this next part of our conversation, let me acknowledge, because when I saw you yesterday at the live stream of the Eswatini Taiwan business presentation, I said to myself, I wonder if the minister will be able to make it to the breakfast show. I might receive a call in the morning and he telling me that I can no longer come. We are tired. But as Minister Mangoba highlighted, the clarion call was pretty clear. Yeah. It is Ngwe. And indeed, we appreciate, because that means you are forthright with the communication and certainly understanding how grave of a situation this is. The bigger picture, agriculture and transition, is our next conversation, and we understand in this year's national budget over 170 million, if I'm correct, was earmarked for the agricultural sector, including inputs, of course, irrigation schemes, a new aquaculture center in Malkins. An update on these investments being deployed right now.
Okay, I think if we go back to the initial interview we had when I assumed office.
Right.
You'll remember that I mentioned a number of things that needed to be put in place for agriculture to transform, to be an effective sector. One of them was food sovereignty, and the most important one was what I called targeted investment.
Right.
We needed to do targeted investments into agriculture and also commercialization of agriculture and a lot of other things. So we've been trying to mobilize funds to do some of the programs, because we then went out and put out a strategy for the ministry, and then we set out programs and objectives that need to be implemented to achieve those goals. Funding or getting money into the sector is important to stimulate it. So how are these funds that we've attained? Because some of these funds come from the central budget, but some of them come from international organizations. The Aquaculture Center, we are happy that it's now operational. It was through the assistance of the Taiwanese government, and what it's doing, it's producing fingerlings for the farmers, so that they can go and do their fish production and be able to make their livelihoods better.
Yeah.
So we want to scale up that sector, because it is one of the cheapest source of protein, and we do have challenges of stunting in the country for our children because they're not getting enough protein. So, but we believe that through fish farming or aquaculture, we should be able to upscale our production of protein for this. So the Aquaculture Center is central in making sure that there is enough fingerlings for the farmers to be able to produce.
Right.
Some of the programs that we are running, from here now, for instance, I'm going to a function where we'll be recognizing the disbursement of about 32 million of 32 emalangeni to farmers through the Eswatini Agricultural Development Fund. So that is one of the interventions. We launched this fund on the 28th of November last year. And so some of the monies that we're talking about are in there, and that dispersed as loans to farmers to make sure that people are able to go and farm and be able to not only farm, but also be involved in the agro value chain, whether it's transportation, logistics, cold chain management, and everything that deals with, or even technology for the youth. We always encourage the youth because they want to use technology to do their farming, drones and all the things of that nature.
Yeah.
We have funding for them through the Eswatini Agricultural Fund. The next session I'll have this morning is where we will be receiving about 5 vehicles from what we call the Livestock Improvement Project.
Right.
So this project is going to assist the livestock value chain. We've got money from the European Union, and we started off by dispersing through buying baling machines. We've got 4 sets that we bought and we gave to farmers out there, especially the youth, to go and do baling.
Right.
The set consists of a tractor, a baling machine, a rake, and a slasher. So it's a full kitty, which then you can produce, bale, and sell. So these are the things that we are doing to transform agriculture so that people can participate in the value chain, especially the youth. We also have projects which we do with the Women Farmer Foundation to train the young farmers and to make sure that they participate effectively in the agri sector. One thing I'd like to mention just one important point on the funds. Within that money, you did say it's subsidies for the farmers. By the way, we've increased the subsidy this year by an additional 7.5 million. Hambobuye has also increased by some 14 million.
Right.
But the most important thing that, because farming is in 3 segments, there's subsistence or small-scale farming, medium farming, and large-scale farming or commercial farming. We are now starting for the first time in this country to do commercial farming, and we've got 40 million within that 1.7. We've got 40 million that we will be using to farm in some government farms, using some of our parastatals like EWAD and NMC. We call it farming with communities because we want the communities to participate in those projects. And so that's how we're deploying some of this money. And there's this other one, which we call SAP, which went through Parliament. And it was we had a loan bill that was passed, including a grant. And that one is targeting the youth, women, and people living with disabilities. So we're covering the whole spectrum.
I love it. It's very comprehensive. It's just unfortunate we had to deal with FMD while all these developments are happening. Well, there you have it.
All the time.
Minister for Agriculture, Mandla Chawuka, speaking on some really interesting developments, perhaps key takeaways here, 6 months that we have. In fact, we have 4 months now to get back to international trade as we try to fight this foot and mouth disease, but also the improvements in terms of targeted investments and everything that is happening. That's what in the Agricultural Development Fund, what will be happening after this show, 32 million in Malanga, and exciting news, but also the livestock value chain, which he has just spoken to. Really, really exciting. But please, stop smuggling. Let's adhere to everything that has been put in place with regards to fighting FMD. Thank you so much for staying with us here on Kusile Breakfast Show. Bye-bye.